The Cold Omaha Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Hell yeah, let's get Stinko.
Welcome, Giles and the Goalies podcast. I am Giles Farrell, whose skin color can now be best described as pink after the weekend. Across the table from me is Ben Remington.
Hello.
Who appears to have wisely stayed indoors this weekend.
Yes, still very fat and pasty.
Yeah. I tried to get rid of my pasty white skin color, and it turned into pink.
Well, you're mostly Irish, right?
Yeah.
So you don't stand a chance.
So the trade-off was I am given pasty skin color for eternity. Can never get tan.
Sure.
But I have been blessed with a great liver. I'll take that trade.
I can vouch for that. Fair enough.
I am back after a weekend away. I beat Bobby Margarita to the punch on getting used to lake life on July 1st. But I do have a grind my gears that is related to this to lead off the show.
Oh, okay.
I don't mind being outdoors, like up at a cabin. Like, it's great. Except for one thing. Mosquitoes. The bane of humanity.
Yeah.
They literally make life miserable. Friday night, we had to go indoors because they were so bad. And if you have to go inside because mosquitoes are so bad, that's not good.
Yeah.
Especially on a nice night like Friday night was.
Right.
So that's my grind my gears. Very disappointing. I'm already off. Grind my gears is already in off-season mode.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was at my cabin the weekend before, and I think I mostly avoided it. If you don't go out at dusk, it's not too bad. Dusk will absolutely murder you. Will absolutely eat a player alive. So, I would avoid any outdoor area anywhere remotely close to any body of water, which is virtually the entire state, anytime around dusk.
Did you blow off any fireworks this weekend?
I did not. I'm not huge into that, I would say. When I go to an actual 4th of July, I used to go up north for 4th of July once in a while, and that would be a thing where my dad would drop a couple $100 on some very, very large and illegal fireworks from Wisconsin. But as an adult, I have not really done a whole lot of purchasing myself. I actually might, though. I'll take advantage of the post-4th of July sales because I'm going to my cabin again in early August, and I will probably try to set myself on fire then.
My buddy whose relative's cabin I went up to this weekend, previously referred to on this podcast as Gretzky, when we recorded here after Bags one night.
Gotcha.
He went into Wisconsin Friday afternoon and bought a ton of fireworks.
Nice.
So we had quite the show.
Sure.
Saturday night, which was great, and it also included a roll of 8,000 firecrackers.
Oh yeah,
So
that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was fireworks, and as you would expect, a lot of beer.
Yeah, sounds like it.
So that was my weekend. But hey, there was hockey news this weekend. I picked a terrible weekend to leave. Yeah, try going up to the cabin and being away from your phone, and it's also July 1st, and hockey free agency starts.
Yeah, we got invited to a cookout. You went out of town, and I didn't go because I knew that there was going to be a lot going on. I didn't want to miss it, and amongst other reasons. But, a fair amount happened. for the Wild, obviously, the big story was Friday, but Saturday is arguably one of the biggest days on the NHL calendar as far as happenings. So you missed out.
Yes, Friday morning, the big trade finally happened. So everyone could either collectively go, hey, they made a trade, or collectively freak out. I saw a lot of both.
Well, yeah, I was a little bit of both.
And just also from people who follow hockey, or like I saw some relatives today, and it's fairly split down the middle on this trade. Yeah. I haven't, I don't know, except for Wild Twitter, who can never be impressed.
No, and I get it. It depends on who you talk to. There's a lot of Pominville haters out there, a lot, and we've dealt with them. Yeah, I know. Newsflash, and we've dealt with them for a long time. But so it kind of, I think your judgment of this trade kind of split on what you thought of Jason Pominville, because there was some people, that I'm not going to name at my best discretion here, that thought that he had to go. He had to go. He had to go. For what reason, they can't really put their finger on, but they've just thought that he had to go. And then there's another side of the coin that I think most bloggers fall on, that saw the value in Jason Pominville, and not the value from a point where his contract was reasonable, because it wasn't. Everyone would agree that he was overpaid, but there was nothing anybody could really do about it. But he still was a good hockey player at the end of the day. He still provided things to the team despite making the most out of his missed shots on goal.
So for those who live under a rock and have no clue what we're talking about, the official trade on Friday with the Buffalo Sabres, go figure, the red phone with Buffalo is still intact.
It is like the bat phone,
alive
isn't
and well,
it?
yeah.
Tim Murray didn't. He just signed over the bill to their new GM. What's his name? Jason
Botterill.
Botterill, yeah.
So the official trade was the Wild acquired forwards Tyler Ennis, Marcus Foligno, and a third-round pick in 2018 from the Sabres in exchange for Jason Pominville, Marco Scandella, and a fourth-round pick in 2018. Mm-hmm. Which was, as I mentioned, seen with very mixed reaction. And, well, first of all, as I just showed you, I have to address this. The photo Wild.com used for this story, featuring both Foligno and Ennis, is of the most hideous of Buffalo jerseys from 2 years ago with their alternates, where it was yellow in the front and blue in the back.
Yeah.
With gray mixed in there.
Yeah.
But I had to go sit out on a lake for a day and think about it. This is what I do. I go out on a lake and I think about hockey trades.
Sure.
I live a terrible life. Anyway, I want to believe there's good in Tyler Ennis and Marcus Foligno, and I would like to go sometime during the summer and maybe watch some film on them, but I'm not sure I'm totally going to be blown away by that, because the Buffalo Sabres have played less than inspiring hockey for the last 5 years.
Well, then it's tough to actually judge him, because he has played 80 games in the last 2 seasons. So, I think that's a very real criticism of this trade, if you're going to have one, is that if you want to label a guy injury prone, Tyler Ennis is a pretty good guy to label injury prone, at least as far as the last 2 seasons go.
And so basically right now I feel as the Wild got a little less value than maybe what they should have.
Yeah.
But maybe we should have seen the writing on the wall coming with the defenseman trade market in the last few days leading up to this trade. It looked promising when Travis Hamonic got a king's ransom from Calgary.
Right.
But as I maybe kind of threw out there that Vegas may be hosing down the trade market for defensemen, since they picked about 20 defensemen on their team.
They still have 11. Yeah. And I tweeted this out earlier today. They have 8. They have 8 left shot defensemen still on their roster, which is more defensemen than most teams have on their roster. So watered down the defensive market doesn't even begin to describe it. And I think the Wild really missed out by not getting in on a trade early. But who knows? I mean, who knows what the actual dealings were? If Chuck Fletcher was dealing with Mark Bergevin, who God can only predict how that went. I mean, with Mark Bergevin.
Well, first of all, do you think Chuck Fletcher has to get a translator for when he talks to Bergevin because he speaks French? 'Cause anyone who works for the Montreal Canadiens has to be fluent in French.
Right.
So maybe there was a miscommunication between the translator.
Well, maybe he was using Marco Scandella as a translator, and that was the problem.
From what has been reported, it sounded like the Wild were pretty big fans of Foligno, who will get plugged into the third line, fourth line, as will Ennis at somewhere. I can't see either of them being top six material because they were fringe top six players in Buffalo who were a bad hockey team.
Right.
But I guess it will remain to be seen until the Wild come out and play in the fall. But as I mentioned many times, I would rather sit through one more year of Jason Pominville with his, decent production in the bottom six, and then buy him out next year if you so choose. But since Buffalo was one of the 10 teams he could be traded to on his modified no-trade clause, I guess move him while you can.
Yeah, I don't know. Chuck Fletcher even made no bones about it that he wanted to buy out or somehow not buy out, but somehow move Pominville's contract this summer. And we were like, yeah, easier said than done. You and I talked about this at length to begin the offseason where it was going to cost a pretty penny to get rid of that contract, and sure enough, here we are. That's exactly what it cost. I mean, Marco Scandella's value was pretty decent. And there was a lot of rumors that they were going to get a good piece in return for him, and instead they used that value to basically get rid of Jason Pominville's contract. The unfortunate side of things is they got back Tyler Ennis' contract, which is $1 million less, but otherwise exactly the same. 2 years left on his deal, $4.7 million. So I don't know. A lot of people were mad about this trade on Friday morning, myself included, just in that it didn't seem like it was quite what everyone would have preferred to happen. Everyone didn't exactly like the way that it went down. But who knows? There's a lot of wheels in motion here. I mean, obviously freeing up the little bit of the cap space they freed up helps. And Foligno has still yet to be signed as an RFA, so that comes into play too.
I mean, just the swap of draft picks was also just kind of a boggling one. Like, the Wild really aren't moving up a whole lot with their third and fourth swap. I'll eat my words here when I said, yeah, you got to make a change. They made a change, and now here I am kind of questioning said change.
Right.
So I'll just say I'm wary of this trade, but we'll see what happens when these guys get put into lesser roles. Maybe something good will happen.
Yeah,
I'm trying to be an optimist here. I'm trying to just not say negative things.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. So people wanted Pominville gone, and they wanted him gone. And a lot of people covered this. Our friend even Tony Abbott tweeting out some hero charts saying, "Be careful what you wish for," because Pominville was pretty productive. If you don't count goals, which is the only thing he really struggled at because his shooting percentage was at an all-time low. So, and there's something to be said for that. He was signed to score goals. He was paid to score goals. So I understand people's frustrations with him, but everyone saying that he needed to go like he was some kind of locker room cancer or he was something holding the Wild back from winning is absolutely positively ridiculous. And those kind of thoughts are what frustrate fans who make roads to educate themselves, who make attempts to be a smarter fan. It's stuff like that that drives those kind of fans nuts. Hearing those hot takes from other fans.
And I looked, and here's what I got for just as a retrospective of Jason Pominville. He was he was good at 5-on-5, and it was really exemplified this last year at how good he was at 5-on-5. But it was the power play where he really struggled. This last year, it was atrocious. I think he had like 7 assists on the power play, no goals.
Right.
If he was able to do better in that, people would not have been clamoring for him to get moved.
Right.
It's unfortunate, but when you're paying somebody $5.6 million, you want them to score on the power play.
Right.
But I will also fire this to his defense that you remember for much of Mike Yo's existence with Jason Pominville, he was put on the point with Ryan Suter.
Yeah.
Not exactly his bread and butter position.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to fully say, he was awful on the power play when you're not really putting him in a decent spot.
Yeah, if they would have given him more of an Ovechkin type one-timer, spot to take advantage of his shot, that probably would have helped.
And for Marco Scandella, I made it pretty clear that he should be the defenseman and get moved. He's had 2 bad seasons in a row. He had a really good playoff for all 5 games of them. But 2 bad years in a row, it seems to be a thing. It's just not a weird, trend.
Yeah.
And hopefully a fresh start in Buffalo will do him good. But this was the right defenseman to move. Even though it sounded like Jonas Brodin could have maybe fetched a little bit better of return, I still thought Scandella was the defenseman you kind of wanted to move on. But that's kind of where I'm at. If that makes any sense to anyone listening, which I don't know why people listen to this. Sometimes when I listen back to this, I go, I said this out loud?
I think it's our cheeky shenanigans that keep people coming back. Evil shenanigans. But with Scandella, that was basically his salary dump. And you can say what you want for his salary. It was, a lot, you could go kind of either way with it. But it all kind of boils down to he was paid a little bit more than he probably should have been. Because he looked good early in his career, so Fletcher gave him the extension for $4 million a year, which isn't an exorbitant contract. But you shouldn't have a third-pairing defenseman who's struggling making $4 million a year, which is what he was in the Wild, even though he's seen as a top 4 defenseman everywhere else. But they didn't really take advantage of the value that he had on the market. All day I was watching NHL Network on Saturday, and they were talking about the Habs missing out on Marco Scandella like it was some kind of tragedy, like it was some kind of infamous blunder that they missed out on getting the great Marco Scandella. And I think that I just really want to know how everything went down with the Habs as far as that trade falling apart. The Habs, for whatever reason, have a hole in their pocket when it comes to Alex Galchenyuk, and the Wild just couldn't seem to take advantage of that for some reason, even after the expansion draft.
Well, it seemed like they just kind of lost interest all of a sudden.
Yeah,
like
which I don't get.
Something got stuck in their craw, and they really backed away. And really the Wild, for a good chunk of time, they really backed away from trade discussions. It seemed like after Jonathan Drouin was traded, who was their reportedly top target.
Yeah, I think after they missed out on him is when they probably made the deal with Vegas.
That's when the Galchenyuk stuff kind of started to fly around. But as I said, nothing ever came of that. And as I said last week, Mark Bergevin walked over to an empty draft table. Nobody was there, or Chuck Fletcher wasn't there, so we could have had Galchenyuk then.
Probably for a 7th-round pick. Yeah. God damn it. And so in summation of this trade, I don't like this trade on the surface because I was okay with Jason Pominville being on this team, and I thought there was enough value for Marco Scandella that you could get more out of him than just, Marcus Foligno. Because I think Ennis, I don't know that his value is that much higher than Jason Pominville. He's younger, sure. He's, 27? And him and Spurge are best buddies, which shouldn't count for anything. But
but did you see the photo of them from when they're 10 years old? It's totes adorbs.
It is totes adorbs. but still, like, I just think that Marco Scandella is worth more than a large, uncoordinated fourth liner. And that weird 1-round pick upgrade, which like we said is kind of weird. It gives the Wild 3 third-round picks next year, even though they have no second and no fourth. Okay, let's hope someone falls, I suppose.
So Ennis kind of flips around from wing to center. He's another one of those that the Wild seemingly have, and
I gotta assume he plays wing here.
That they got a what?
I gotta assume he plays wing here, don't you think? Unless he's going to be the fourth line center, which seems like kind of a waste as well, because why are you trading for him if you're going to make him your fourth line center?
Michael Russo threw out a depth chart on his blog, and he had Charlie Coyle listed as third line center between Foligno and Ennis.
Okay.
My God. When Coyle is in one of his slumps, just think of how atrocious that line is going to be. Woof.
Yeah, I'm not. The whole Foligno thing and Fletcher obviously was hot for him, but for what? I mean,
he's got the hots for Foligno.
He seems like a younger version of Chris Stewart, which we already have. So it's like, why are you trading for this kid? I'm not hating on the player. I think every hockey player has a place, but you've already got one of those. Like, you don't have a fourth line center. You already have a fourth line winger with size who will throw hands once in a while and has a little bit of touch around the net. You've already got one of those guys.
Yeah. All right. I can probably do it for that trade discussion.
I suppose.
That was Friday, June 30th, and the next day, July 1st, was the beginning of free agent frenzy. And oh boy, I got confused Saturday morning when my phone was blowing up at like 10 a.m. with all of these reported deals already in place, and free agency didn't start till 11 a.m.
Right? Oh, God.
My understanding of the discussion period players can have with potential new teams is that actual terms cannot be discussed.
Huh.
It's weird how the NHL has just turned an eye to this. Like, when players are being officially announced at 11:02, what? Like, come on. I don't get it. The NHL is just... That's something.
Yeah, I'm fine with them. Just take out the verbiage. You know what I mean? Like, just take out the verbiage where you cannot discuss. It's fine if you don't want deals to be official until July 1st at noon. I get that. That's fine, whatever. It makes for a fun day. Wild, our hockey fans enjoy that day because, there's still a lot of stuff out on the table. And this year was one of the years where it didn't seem like there was... all the big guys were necessarily 100% signed at 11, But it just, I don't know. It seemed like, it seems like, just another dog and pony show. The NHL, no surprise. It is what it is, kind of thing.
So on July 1st, the Wild clearly targeting depth in their system as they signed 7 players to contract. 6 of them were of the two-way variety, meaning that players can go back and forth pretty much at will. I believe that's what two-way means. Basically, they don't have to clear waivers. Or do they?
I think it has more to do with the money.
Yeah.
Where they have a minor league salary and an NHL salary.
Yep, there's an NHL salary and minor league salary. I also just thought, for whatever reason, that they could just be shuffled back and forth from the minors, but I could be wrong on that.
I think one-way players still can, but maybe they do have to clear waivers, I think, is the deal. And obviously the salary is all guaranteed at whatever they sign them at if it's a one-way deal.
So the big name that the Wild signed, big quotation marks, was defenseman Kyle Quincy, previously of the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah.
That came in later in the day. I actually didn't know this till 10 minutes before we started recording. That's how out of the loop I was.
Sure.
But right-handed defenseman, I believe.
Left-handed.
He's left-handed?
He's left-handed. That was exactly my reaction too, and so it seemed like the Wild would be guaranteed to sign a right-handed defenseman because that's what they needed. You know, they needed a guy to replace Prosser or Foligno since both guys are apparently gone. But they signed Quincy, who's left-handed, but Russo even said on Saturday that apparently they're just going to plan on playing him or Olofsson on their offhand, which, you know, is not the worst thing in the world, and certainly many defensemen have played their offhand because right-handed defensemen are a little scarce, and it's, you know, different for them, but I just feel like it's a lot harder to play defense on your offhand than it is to play wing on your offhand. Because wing, you can kind of go either way. It's good to have it's good to be, you know, one hand or the other, but it's not super crucial to the position as much as it is defenseman. You want that stick blade pointing towards the boards. It just makes things a lot easier when you don't have your back to, you know, the play, basically.
Hey, great news. Quincy is pals with Chris Stewart.
Yeah, no, that's... I noticed that on Saturday,
Let's
too.
get everyone's friends in here.
Well, I'm surprised they didn't re-sign Chris Porter, then.
Oh, man. My head hurts thinking about it. So, yeah, Kyle Quincy was one, and then the rest were all signed to the two-way contracts, which was defenseman Ryan Murphy, forward Landon Ferraro, center Cal O'Reilly, defenseman Alex Grant, goalie Nicholas Svedberg, who is going to give Alex Stalock, quote, competition for the backup job.
Yeah,
you guys can't tell, but my eyes just rolled.
You know, and I think he actually will. Svedberg was the backup for the Bruins for actually only really a full season, and did okay, did just fine. And then went to the KHL soon thereafter. I don't know exactly why he went to the KHL, because, like I said, he had a decent year as the backup in Boston, but I think he will give Stalock a run for his money. I think they're in a really good spot with having Stalock and Svedberg compete, both of them on really cheap two-way deals. Or I think Stalock's actually on a one-way deal, but he can still go back down to Iowa, as we talked about. But, yeah, I don't know. It just seems like that was a good signing, a good low-risk signing. One way or another, Iowa has its starting goalie. And the Wild, you know, you hate to say it, but they couldn't do much worse than what Darcy Kemper did last year, especially in the second half. So, you know, hopefully they've figured it out. I would have preferred them go after a little bit more of a proven commodity to be the backup, but they don't really have them. It seemed like they didn't have the money to do that.
And
so,
if you look at the list of goalies I thought they should go out and try to get, I think there was only one goalie left, and the last one, Curtis McElhinney, was signed by like
Friday.
noon yesterday.
Yeah. Well, and then I don't believe, and Jonas Enroth was a name that came up a lot because he had an awful year last year, but was actually pretty decent in the backup role before that. I don't think he's landed anywhere just yet, but he would have been a name where I would have probably preferred him to Svedberg. But, you know, Svedberg's NHL numbers aren't terrible. I think he's got a like 918, 920 save percentage in the NHL, granted in only a handful of games, but still, that's something.
The last two on the signing list, defenseman Alex Grant and left wing from the University of Minnesota, Kyle Rowell.
Oh, I didn't load the Rouser. God damn it.
I'll put it in there.
Okay, thank you.
This also had a mixed reaction at the pool party I was at this afternoon.
Oh, really?
Yes, because one, you know, there's a crowd, including me, that's just, hey, great for Iowa, and he can be a call up. And,
yeah.
And obviously, this is Dan approved, but you know, he's just a workhorse. You know, he's small, but you know, he works hard, and you know, at least with the Gophers, he really got a lot of the gritty kind of goals that you know the Wild kind of lack.
Yeah,
but you know, not exactly sure if that's kind of translated into the AHL for him yet, because obviously I'm not trying to watch Florida's AHL team. But
his point totals in the AHL weren't bad. They weren't anything that would, blow your mind, but they weren't bad. And his NHL numbers were obviously almost non-existent. So,
and there was some. I believe maybe this isn't great because the Wild don't need another undersized forward.
Well, they really don't seem to be afraid of that right now.
Right.
I mean, they just acquired Ennis in deference to Pominville. Foligno does bring a lot of extra size as opposed to Jordan Schrader. So I do think they're balancing things, but I think the hockey world as a whole is getting less and less afraid of those small guys. And we saw with the Wild's draft this year, too. Their first 2 picks were undersized guys. And so it seems that it's really kind of changing opinions in the NHL that size isn't really the most absolute crucial thing. Does it come into effect? Yeah, absolutely does. And anybody who's been on the ice will be the first to tell you that there's a big difference, in a scrum for a puck with a guy who's 6'4" than a guy who's 5'9". But it just kind of bears out, and the stats bear out that small guys can still produce at a high level in the NHL.
Do I think that Kyle Rouse is going to be on Minnesota's opening night roster? No.
No, God, no.
I think we'll see him, 10 so games next year in Minnesota, maybe depending on injuries. And the Wild really had good luck this year when it came to injuries. So naturally, that's something that would probably catch up to him next year.
Right.
Seems like that's how that goes, but
and acquiring Tyler Ennis.
Yeah. Oh boy. So that's really all the Wild did on July 1st. No big splash on the free agent market, thankfully. It's the last thing the Wild need to do is sign another overpriced free agent.
Right.
Did you have any other thoughts on free agent frenzy? From any other deals around the league?
Well, around the league-wise, I think it was kind of a lackluster kind of free agency because there wasn't a whole lot of talent out there, and we saw that by the gems of free agency were Martin Hansel and Kevin Shattenkirk, who are good players.
Shat deuces.
But they're not franchise altering players, you know what I mean? So it was just one of those off years, and then the theme of this off season was most definitely getting the band back together. Holy Christ. I think every other signing that occurred was a player returning to a former team. So there's that. That just kind of... And it seemed like the contracts that were signed weren't actually terrible. It seemed like there was a lot of free agent contracts that were relatively reasonable and made a lot of sense. Some of the extensions signed, on the other hand, maybe not so much. So that was kind of the story of this year's July 1st, was that the free agent deals were actually relatively reasonable, and the extensions were quite lucrative.
Especially if you're Carey Price.
I know, God.
$84 million over 8 years, and $70 million of that is in signing bonus.
Yeah, so it's guaranteed.
Good Lord.
Yeah, and so he can still be bought out at some point in that contract. And actually, it's easier to buy him out because it's not salary necessarily, but still. It just goes back to Mark Bergevin being a blithering idiot. I like Carey Price as much as the next guy, and I think he deserves to be very well paid. Does he deserve to be the highest paid player in the NHL along with Taves and Kane? No. And at 30 years old, are you going to sign him to the highest paid contract in the NHL for 8 years? No.
Second highest contract in the NHL.
Well, McDavid hasn't actually signed one yet, but
it's not?
No. Oh. No, right now, those three are...
Carey Price technically owns that.
Yeah.
Once Connor McDavid puts pen to paper.
Which makes sense. He should be the highest paid player in the NHL. But, Carey Price making $10.5 million a year until he's 38 years old. 38 28 years old. I don't know. And so, like, that reinvigorated the thought in me that Chuck Fletcher, not to absolve him of any guilt, but him dealing with Mark Bergman had to be just a nightmare, because the guy's clearly a moron. What?
So I have to interject here. Our Twitter friend, Drunken Carney,
Sure.
threw out an analogy about Chuck Fletcher's off-season when it came to handling the expansion draft, then to the trade market.
Sure.
He handled the expansion draft expertly, but then seems to have shanked the 27-yard field goal to win the game. That's so good.
Oh, that's cold. Yeah. That's accurate, though. It seems to be somewhat accurate. Yeah.
Oh, rest in peace, Blair Walsh. Sorry, I really had to put that in there. That was too good to not share.
That's tremendous.
Just scanning around the league, Dallas signed Martin Hansel to a 3-year deal. Yep. I really like what Dallas has done this offseason. I think they're going to be, I don't know, at least to me right now, they should probably be the favorite to win the Central Division next year.
I would agree.
Just with, you've got Ben and Sagan up front, and
right. Are we getting into
force.
Winners and losers right now? Or?
I'm just saying
that was a question in the mailbag.
That was a question?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't read the mailbag. I guess I'll stop that.
I mean, we can totally go into that. It's just part of the mailbag. So. Which we can cover it now and just, it is Brett, so we can skip over him. We've done it before. Not really, but that's a good joke.
Well, before we hit that, we have to say goodbye to the departing Wild players.
Can you put in some Sarah McLachlan here when you edit?
I could probably do that.
Okay.
I'm going to be up all night editing, apparently.
Do you work tomorrow? Oh, you do? That's unfortunate.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, with the Wild bringing in a bunch of guys for depth, they let a bunch of guys go.
Right.
The notables being, obviously, as I just said, Marty Hansel, who wasn't really expected to come back at all.
Right.
Christian Foligno, who they didn't qualify this last week. He signed with the LA Kings on I believe it was a 1-year deal.
1 year, $850K. So I guess they didn't qualify him because, and Russo outlined this, that they were afraid that he was going to go to arbitration and get a one-way deal, which apparently they were afraid of with him. And they thought that he was going to get a similar deal to, and I forget who it was exactly now, but there was I think a Jets defender that got a $2.8 million deal for 2 years, who is a similar profile to Foligno. So I think they were concerned about that. Obviously, the market doesn't bear that out because he ends up getting 85 or $850K. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of people disappointed that Foligno won't be back. I'm kind of one of them. I kind of liked his game, just in the fact that he had a big hard shot from the point, and those are, it seems like hard to come by sometimes. Otherwise, I don't think it's a massive loss. I don't think in sometime in mid-December we're going to be lamenting the loss of Christian Foligno. I'm interested to see what he does in Los Angeles, but I'm not really heartbroken.
And then Darcy Kemper signed also with the LA Kings on a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
Are you going to go on a Kings podcast and be a Darcy Kemper apologist?
I don't think I'm going to need to be, because they have Jeff Zakoff, who's almost as bad or worse than Darcy Kemper. So I don't think that he's going to need to be defended in that area. And I've said, and I don't know if I said on the podcast, but I think I did a couple weeks ago, but I'm interested to see. I think he can be good going forward, because it's just going to take the right coaching to unlock him. And I criticized Bob Mason a couple of weeks ago and not being able to unlock Darcy Kemper. And I think that's the only thing missing from his game is kind of the mental side of it. So I'm interested to see if that happens for him. Certainly Los Angeles is, John Quick has been good. They kind of developed Martin Jones into an NHL starting goalie. They certainly got the most out of Peter Budaj last season. So I'm interested to see what Los Angeles can do with Darcy Kemper. I think he can be a serviceable backup. A change of scenery was absolutely a must for that to happen. I don't think that was going to happen for him here. And I totally understand the organization moving on from him, and by the same token, him moving on from the organization. But, I think he'll be fine there. I think him and Zakoff will probably compete, I would assume. But I don't know. I kind of like his chances to make a nice little backup NHL career for himself.
Sounds like old friend Nate Prosser will be leaving.
Yeah.
Hasn't signed yet, but
yeah. Russo said he had interest and he was going to sign somewhere, pretty quickly on Saturday. And everyone's like, oh, well, obviously he's going to return to Mike Yeo. I mean, we literally have a podcast called Nate Prosser Bromance because Mike Yeo and Nate Prosser have a serious bromance. But apparently that hasn't happened yet, and I'm not really sure why. It also doesn't help that Prosser signed with the Blues a couple years ago and was
waived
very quickly jettisoned from the Blues that same year, that same training camp even. So, I don't know. It just, I don't know. We'll see where he goes. I'm not disappointed that he's leaving the Wild, but he wasn't terrible last season. I think in the role that he was in, as a seventh defenseman, I wouldn't have minded him at all.
Weirdly, Ryan White is still unsigned as we record on day 2 of free agency. But Chris Thorburn was signed by the St. Louis Blues.
Yes. Oh, it's tremendous. I hear that Ryan White is garnering a lot of interest from the Federal League, though. So he could make a name for himself there.
Every team in the Federal League. Yeah, old-time hockey. I'm just trying to think of any other Wild free agents that I might have missed.
Well, there's the minor league ones, which I don't think amount to much. I don't know that Brady Brassard has landed anywhere. I don't know that anybody cares.
No.
The answer is no. It'll be interesting to say Ryan White. It's interesting to see if he is in training camp, if he gets like a PTO or something, just to kind of make the team, or maybe to land in Iowa, perhaps. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, nothing super surprising as far as ex-Wild players going anywhere. Our friend Tom Vanek has still not landed anywhere. The ageless Jaromir Jagr has still not been signed by an NHL team.
Jagr.
I know, right? So yeah, I don't know. Interesting. We'll see. We'll see what happens, though. There's, we just got the Patrick Marleau news just before we started podcasting here this afternoon. So obviously, even though free agency only feels like it lasts for about 3 hours, it actually does last essentially the month of July. So there's still a lot of things that could happen, even though not much is left to happen.
Yeah, we just got word that Joe Thornton re-signed with the Sharks.
That was announced late last night.
It was?
Yeah.
Well, it was just made official.
Oh, okay.
It included a picture of him signing the contract.
Naked?
No, he was mowing the lawn.
Dad life. Yeah. So along those lines, the only hole that the Wild seem to have in their lineup is kind of that fourth line center. As you mentioned, Charlie Coyle being penciled in as a center right now, which we would probably not prefer, I'm assuming. I know I would, but who knows with this hockey team. But that seems to be the one signing they have to make left, and whether it's a fourth line center or an actual forward, I guess we'll find out. But yeah, that seems to be like the only thing left. And given their cap space, they've got about $15 million left in cap. And just kind of by all projections and previous salaries, re-signing Nino, Granlund, and Foligno will
probably
cost them
most of that.
Yeah, will cost them probably in the range of $13 million. It may be even more. I mean, this Kuznetsov deal doesn't bode well for getting Granlund cheap. So yeah, if those guys take up 13 to 14 million, you've literally got $1 million or possibly less to sign another forward to kind of round out the depth on your roster.
How do you feel about the Matt Cullen rumors for the second consecutive offseason?
Maybe that's what the Wild are waiting for. Maybe, Cullen basically called it a career. I mean, he in interviews immediately following their Cup win, he basically called it a career and didn't sound like he was really looking at coming back. But now it kind of sounds like it's Minnesota, Pittsburgh, or retirement. So who knows what happens with that? I think he'd be a welcome addition. I think he still has a lot to bring to an NHL team, even at at the ripe age of, 40, I believe, on the nuts. So I'd be for it. Certainly a lot of Wild fans lament the fact that he was not signed last offseason in deference to Tyler Grayovac. So, I don't know.
I feel like there's a player leaving that I'm forgetting, but I think we covered all of them. So we can move on to the mailbags. We actually got some good questions this week. All right. And of course, this doesn't put it in order for when it was asked. Good job, Twitter. From our friend Gretchen.
Sure.
Yager or Cullen?
I don't know. I'm going to say Cullen because it just makes more sense with the construction of this team as is. And he'll probably come for just a shade cheaper than Yager would. Who knows? But Yager, God, would it be awesome to have Yager here? How freaking awesome would that be?
I was just going to say, to hell with it. Sign Yager. Even though it doesn't really make a lot of sense, just do it. Just for the entertainment.
Right. Add another jersey to the traveling Yagers.
I'd get a new Yager jersey.
Who wouldn't? Sell like hotcakes.
From our friend Brett Marshall. Favorite 4th of July traditions? I get into the ridiculousness of the overzealous patriotism. I do enjoy that. I know there's a lot of people that hate this country and all that jazz and see any kind of patriotism as just buffoonery. But I think it's fun. Why not? Enjoy it. It is what it is. Like, there's reasons to celebrate this country for reasons other than why you hate this country. So I like doing that. I have a pair of Stars and Stripes socks. I have, various patriotic articles of clothing. Just have fun with it. You could have just named off another article of clothing, like a shirt or something, but you really left the door open, so that's weird.
With the socks?
You said other articles of clothing.
Oh, well, sure. Yeah, I meant like shirts and
okay.
Yeah.
I took it a weird way.
I don't have any patriotic boxers, if that's what you're asking.
My favorite tradition,
drinking?
Unlike any other. Yeah. Actually, you know what? I didn't make this an annual thing, but a couple years ago, one on the 4th of July weekend. I don't know if it was actually on the 4th of July or if it was like the day or before or after, but I just started drinking and I watched all the 80s, 90s Batman movies. The four movies. Or no, I'm sorry. I just watched the last 2.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Batman Forever and Batman and Robin?
Yep.
Oh, God. Why did you do that?
I was drinking.
Okay, well, that's
the only way to do that.
Yeah, that's true.
I thought after, I was like, maybe I should make that annual tradition. But most times I'm just not in town to do that.
True.
So, how long until I don't have to cross the border for good fireworks? Well, Brett, it took them a very, very long time to get Sunday liquor sales approved, which started today. So I would say we've got a good 20 years before we see good fireworks in Minnesota.
Yeah, I'm not going to get too heavily into the politics of things because that's not what this pod. We save that for other Minnesota Wild hockey podcasts. They can cover the politics. We'll cover the.
Yeah, we let them do that.
Right, they're the experts.
We cover food and jerseys.
Yes, that's our niche. So, as Dave Schwartz found out in about 7 minutes. But this state leans a certain direction, and I don't assume that direction includes lighting off very dangerous fireworks anytime soon, because it's not safe at the end of the day, and they're just not big on letting us have that kind of fun.
No.
Hence the liquor sales bit and other things.
But if the
And it's
NFL wanted fireworks for the Super Bowl, Minnesota would be like,
Well, you
oh
can still
yeah,
do that.
go ahead.
I've been to wrestling shows where they light up fireworks inside.
I was just more trying to make a point.
On, hating on the Viking Stadium.
Yeah.
It's on brand for you, so yeah.
Another one from Brett. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you evaluate Chuck Fletcher's offseason?
That's a rough one. I think the trade that no one really likes all that much skews things a lot. I think he handled the expansion thing well enough. The draft looked good for the picks that they did have. And free agency, he really prioritized getting depth for this organization. But the trade is ultimately what's going to define this postseason, off-season, sorry. I think there's just so much, and they still have signings to make. And I think, and it could be wrong, and maybe I'm way off, but I think the signings of Nino and Granlund, possibly Foligno, and the signing of a fourth-line center, I think those are still the most important parts of this postseason. Off-season, sorry, damn. I think those are still the biggest things that are going to happen. That's what we're going to remember this offseason for. That's when we signed Nino to this contract, or that's when we signed Granlund to that contract, or that's when we had to trade away Granlund because we couldn't sign him, or that's when we had to trade away Nino because we couldn't. I think that's going to define this offseason is those signings. So, I liked a lot of things outside of the trade, but I didn't like the trade. So right now, I would give him a 5. And if the Nino, Granlund, fourth-line center, Foligno signings go well, I think he can bump up a little. But if those don't go well, I think he's bumping down into bad territory. What do you think?
I'd say 6.5.
Okay, wow.
I think the way he handled the expansion draft, like if you did this in like real time, like we can go back during we could come back and get asked the same question on our first show in the fall.
Sure.
When we really know everything. And if you were to like track your rating of Chuck Fletcher during the offseason,
yeah,
they get to the expansion draft, you see it spike to like a 10 because he handled it so well.
Yeah.
Or maybe a 9. I don't know. But
yeah.
It'd be high up there. And then it would come back down to earth with that trade.
Sure.
With Buffalo. And then you see it maybe start to move up a little bit with the depth signings.
Yeah.
And then say he does well on the Granlund, Niederreiter, Foligno contracts. He could still have a pretty salvageable summer in terms of that scale.
Sure.
But if he just hands out ridiculous contracts to Granlund, Niederreiter, then yeah, that's going to make the number drop. But right now, I'd put it at 6.5.
Oh.
Just because I can't decide if I really want it to be 6 or 7, so I copped out and put it in the middle.
6.9, Giles.
Nice. That was almost what Kevin Shattenkirk made.
I know. I don't know. I'm not ready to fall over myself praising the expansion deals either because, he left Dumba unprotected, and I felt like that was a strategic move on his part, but I don't know. I guess if you had to do the offseason all over again, maybe you would do it differently. I don't know. I really don't. So maybe I'll look more in depth for this for an article, I guess, and we'll go from there.
Last one from Brett. Winners and losers of the offseason so far.
Yeah, we covered this. The Dallas Stars seem to do pretty well for themselves. They acquired Ben Bishop, which is kind of an afterthought now because they did it so freaking long ago. And they acquired Mark Mathot from from Ottawa via Vegas. And, they're strong. They got Martin Hansel. That's a good signing, a good third-line center signing. Very good. And they're in strong talks for Radulov, which would be a nice addition, too. They kind of seem to be doing everything right with Ken Hitchcock at the helm again. So you got to like that. I think there's a lot of other teams that did well for themselves. I liked, people praise the Rangers. I don't know. They seem to lost a lot of players too, so I'm not really crazy about them, even though they got Shattenkirk on a decent deal. Yeah.
My worry, like I said, Dallas, I think, have a good offseason. Mm-hmm. My worry with them is that they're still a little bit lacking defensively. Like I said, it feels like other teams have kind of maybe taken steps back this offseason, so they could easily be, put into the favorite for the Central Division category.
Right.
But that would be my only concern with Dallas. Another team, I think, quietly now having a decent offseason is the Jets.
Yeah.
And more of it came yesterday. They signed Dmitry Kulikov for the blue line.
Yeah.
And they signed Steve Mason to be their starting goalie, which I think is a terrific move on their part.
Oh, yeah? I saw some people bashing the Kulikov contract just because of its length.
I don't think he's worth $4.3 million a season, but I think he's a good guy for them to plug in on the blue line.
Sure. And Lord knows they need help stopping the puck. I mean, they were kind of like Dallas Light last season. They've got more scoring than they know what to do with, but they couldn't stop a beach ball. So, yeah, I don't think that's wrong.
I mean, if the Jets can get, somewhat decent depth in their bottom six and, they added a defenseman and they got a pretty good starting goaltender, I think the Jets can be a playoff team next year with this roster I'm looking at.
Possibly.
As Bruce Boudreau pointed out, at some point during the year, he said the Jets have the best top six in hockey, which is fair.
I don't disagree. I think that's entirely possible. I think the Canucks added a lot of guys, and obviously getting away from Ryan Miller was probably a good thing for them. Anders Nilsson had a pretty good year. We'll see if he can carry the load there. They seem to sign a decent amount of players. I think Nashville did really well for themselves. They signed Nick Bonino, Scott Hartnell. Those are some pretty good signings, I felt like. I think there were some good depth signings, or some good, top six and depth signings. Hartnell was the guy we talked about a little bit late last week after he was bought out. He obviously wanted to return to playing with Peter Laviolette. So, yeah.
I think the Arizona Coyotes are having a terrific offseason.
Yeah.
The Derek Stepan Antti-Ranta trade was incredible. And Nicholas Hjalmarsson.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Calgary. I think I said it last week. You can make an argument that Calgary could be favorites to maybe win the Pacific Division next year.
I don't know. I'm not big on Mike Smith, is my thing.
That was the caveat to that was if Mike Smith can be an average goaltender, I think the Flames can win that division. Now, wouldn't surprise me because it's Calgary if Mike Smith completely what's the bed.
Right.
I almost said one word before the other. But as for the loser column, I really don't like what the Chicago Blackhawks are doing, even though as me, Wild fan, is going, yes, I like what the Chicago Blackhawks are doing because they're making their team worse. I think, objectively, they're not having a good offseason.
No, and it seems like what they're doing is going to be very fan-friendly, bringing back Brandon Saad and Patrick Sharp. But
get the band back together.
They got the band back together. But it just seems like they're just hemorrhaging defensemen at this point. Like, Trevor Van Riemsdyk leaves via the expansion draft, which is, not a small loss for them. And then, as you said, Hjalmarsson leaving. Like, he's a guy that I really like. I really liked his game. And so right now, and I was just looking at it this morning on Cap Friendly, they have 5 defensemen on their roster right now. 5. And, their cap issues have been well documented. They got out from under the Kruger contract today, allegedly. But it just seems like they're more worried about doing weird moves that make their fans happy than actually improving their hockey team, because their lack of defense is just absolutely staggering, and I think they're really going to pay for it. And obviously losing Artemi Panarin, there was a reason why Columbus made that trade. Columbus doesn't make that trade for the feel good happy story for Chicago fans. Columbus makes that trade because they're getting Artemi Panarin.
Although, once John Tortorella gets his hands on him.
Well, that's true.
All right. I don't know. Do you have any other losers? I'm not.
Well, I mean, the Lightning traded away Jonathan Drouin and signed Dan Girardi, so that automatically gives them an L for the offseason. Yeah, other than that...
I'm not really big on the Washington Capitals offseason.
No, it was talked about today after they signed Kuznetsov to that deal that they've got a real tough road ahead of them re-signing a bunch of their RFAs. They've got 5 RFAs and about $4 million to sign them. So that's not going to be easy. And so the Ovechkin trade talk has re-percolated, and for good reason.
And then you're just handing out silly money to TJ Oshie.
Yeah. Why? It just, I don't know. It just makes no sense. Let him walk. Christ, what was the harm in that?
Pains me to say Washington's a loser this offseason. I also got reminded of that fact of the Washington Capitals postseason at the pool party this afternoon.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. From Gretchen, how many liquor stores did Giles go to today just because he could?
Well, one. Hey, that's all you need.
Just to say I could.
Why do you need to go to more than one? Gretchen?
Yeah.
One is fine.
From Eric Olson. Any chance the Wild finish as the 3rd seed in the West again this upcoming year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's entirely possible. I didn't like the Wild's moves, and I felt like they, everyone feels like they downgraded at a lot of positions. But at the same time, this team isn't like markedly worse. The top 6 is still very much intact. The top 4 defensemen are still very much intact. Yeah, it just feels like it's entirely possible. And the moves they made, whether you like them or not, they could still go either way. Tyler Ennis could very well outproduce Jason Pominville. We don't know. Gustav Olsson could very well have a much better year than Marco Scandella. We don't know. There's still a lot of very real possibilities. Do we not like the moves, and are we okay with being angry about the trades? Yeah, absolutely. But I still feel like it's very possible that the Wild end up in a good or better spot next season.
Yeah, and I don't know. I also think it's possible. I think just from how it looks again, the West is going to be wide open.
Yeah.
And obviously nobody is really jumping out at me right now as a heavy favorite, so that will favor the Wild. So
sure.
We'll see what happens.
Right.
From Kelly Riley. Mimosa or Bloody Mary? I'll go first.
Okay.
Mimosa.
Okay.
Hot take. I hate Bloody Marys.
Really?
Hate them.
I'm kind of in a similar realm where it's like I like Bloody Marys until I've had like a quarter of one, and then I'm kind of done with it.
I have a sip of one and I'm done with it.
They sound good, and then I have like up to a half, and then I'm like, you know what? I could move on to something else. Whereas mimosas, yeah, I mean, they're not my most favorite drink, I would say, but I could drink several of them and go on with that. I mean, they're classier, I guess you could say. I don't know. Yeah, just more of my jam, I guess you could say.
There's something weird about tomato juice. I can't. Not with alcohol.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm with you on that.
From Wild in Wisconsin. Wild free up cap space, yet they still seem to not win the Buffalo trade. Well, yeah, that's kind of how we feel.
that's kind of what we talked about for the first 20 minutes of the show.
Yeah. Thoughts on the Kyle Quincy signing? I'm not a fan. AHL body or bottom pairing defenseman. It's again from Wild in Wisconsin.
He's a bottom pair.
Yeah,
guy.
We also kind of hit on that. He'll be your bottom pairing kind of defenseman. 5, 6, maybe even 7, depending on who the 7th defenseman is.
Right.
But I don't know. I guess I can't complain when you're trying to get defensive depth. It's never a bad thing to have.
Well, the curious thing for me is that, I mean, his stats looked okay, and maybe someone knows more than I do about this, but his stats look okay. But he signed for $1.2 million, which is, a significant amount more than you would have paid for Nate Prosser or Christian Folin. So hopefully, on his offhand, he's better than those guys because they paid a lot more for him.
Last one from our friend Serious Mashup.
Well, we got more, too. Tony sent us some previous time.
Yes. The best for last.
Sure.
How many goals will Tyler Ennis have next season?
I'm going to put this is my prediction, less than Jason Pominville. How's that? I don't think that's that bold.
If Serious Mashup reminds me when we do our over-unders for next season, over-unders 2,
That's
Revenge of Giles. We'll throw Tyler Ennis goals in there.
Yeah, no, that's a good one.
I don't know. I'll just guess 15 if he's healthy.
Well, he was a 20-goal scorer in his last healthy season, so you kind of hope that he can at least do that, but his role is going to be different here. I mean, that was on pretty awful Buffalo teams, so where he was probably a lot higher in the lineup. So, I would hope 15 to 20. Otherwise, why the hell did you trade Pominville for him?
And then a few days ago, we had a couple of questions from our friend Tony, who flooded our notifications
of the Hockey Wilderness podcast that we actually get along with.
First question: invent a breakfast soup that would be considered A, a meal, and B, meant for human consumption.
Is he talking about oatmeal? Because I don't think oatmeal's a soup. Is he talking about cereal? Because I've heard that debate too, where cereal is a soup debate. I don't buy that. I think cereal is cereal.
Is cereal.
Yeah,
it's just its own thing.
It's like chili. You can't categorize it as a soup.
Did we just agree on a food take?
We did. Oh, and we did. Last week after the show, we agreed on a food take. That mushrooms are disgusting and not meant for human consumption.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is very true. That was...
Because my girlfriend is a fan.
The after-hours discussion.
Right.
As you guys were trying to decide what to eat for dinner.
Right.
And she threw out the mushrooms, and we both said gross at the same time.
Yeah. Which she is a big fan, being one of those weird Eastern European types. So...
Well, to answer the question, I'd have to go sit out on a lake for a week to think about this.
There's got to be a way to suspend eggs, kind of like a custard, because custard is just basically eggs suspended. But in like a warm application, to where it would be like a hot liquid eggs soup. You could probably make that work. I feel like there's a way to do it, probably involving some molecular gastronomy that is over my head, but I feel like there's a way you could do it. And would it be a meal? Well, no, of course not. It's a soup, so don't be ridiculous.
Oh, boy. We got through an hour and 10 minutes before a soup fight broke out.
We've got a long off season to let it stew. No pun intended.
I was going to say, did you mean to do that? Another one from Tony. Overrated, underrated, favorite, least favorite colors for building a jersey around.
It's a great question. He veered into our lane last week on the podcast and talked about jerseys. I don't know that there's a right answer to this. I really don't. I think there's a lot of different colors that jerseys can be and still look good. I think the North Stars jerseys look good in green. I think the Habs jerseys look good in red. I think the Maple Leafs look good in blue. The Penguins look good in black.
The Edmonton Oilers do not look good in orange.
But the Flyers do. And so that's kind of, it's really a case-by-case basis. Like, I don't know. I think maybe we're attached to certain colors of certain teams because of their history, which is why we don't like Buffalo wearing yellow, which is why we don't like Edmonton wearing orange or Anaheim wearing black. But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do like the classic of the colors in Minnesota. I like the Twins, the navy blue and red. I think that's a good traditional base to work off of. It's nothing too crazy. I'm not big on the purple and gold, obviously. And I think the Wolves, with blue and green, depending on the shades of blue and green, can also look good too. So I don't know. It's really kind of a toss-up for me. It's a tough question for me to answer. It's a great question, and I'm sure some people have certain preferences on it, but I really don't.
Well, you kind of took the words out of my mouth on that one.
There's a lot of words.
But, as you said, it just really depends on the team and the colors. I mean, do I think the Philadelphia Flyers need a teal jersey? Absolutely not. Did the St. Louis Blues need a red accent on their jersey in the 90s? No, absolutely not.
No.
Did the Anaheim Ducks need to switch from a great eggplant and jade look to black and orange? No, absolutely not.
Right.
Here to start the third period. What team is this? It's not Team USA. Oh, yes, it is. They've got on new uniforms. They're wearing the logo of the Duck. I've never seen this before.
Sidebar. I have an announcement. Because Paul Kariya was inducted into Hockey Hall of Fame this past week. I believe that was Monday, if I'm not mistaken. Because I was having an absolutely trash day at work. So I needed something good. There was good news. Paul Kariya went into Hockey Hall of Fame.
Might have been.
I finally did it. I bought one of my Mount Everest hockey jerseys.
Nice. It's a great way to celebrate.
I finally dipped into the treasure chest.
Yeah.
And I bought a Paul Kariya jersey in the Mighty Ducks white.
Nice.
I even have it for you right here.
Outstanding.
Nike.
Mm-hmm.
It's even got the captain's patch out in front. I'm proud of it. Anyway, I just had to get that in there somehow because I'm really excited.
Sure.
Once it shows up, I'll probably never take it off.
Sure.
Anyway, another question from Tony. If you could go back in time and change one hockey decision in the Wild's history, what would it be and why?
This is a good one. I don't know. Can we put not hiring Doug Risebrough in there, maybe? I think that's a very real one. As far as moves go, as far as trades or draft picks, whatever, obviously the Burns trade stands out to a lot of people. I think somebody responded to it with that.
It was Jarek.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense because that I mean, as much as we like Charlie Coyle, that having one of the best defensemen in the NHL like Brett Burns would be nice. So I don't know. I would just for simplicity's sake, I might go with the Burns deal. And Doug Risebrough, or maybe hiring Todd Richards. That could very well be it too. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways you could go with it.
Yeah, I kind of thought on this one, and I also thought like you did, where it's like, can we not hire Doug Risebrough?
Right.
I don't know. Not hiring Mike Gill. For as good as he was, I guess, with young players.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was going to think about this over the weekend, but then the trade happened, so that took priority. But I don't know. You're probably right in saying the Burns trade, and I know Michael Russo has said that Brent Burns wasn't signing anywhere close for what he was signing for in San Jose. But I also think of it like this: it's okay. So you have Brent Burns. Say you give Brent Burns the money you gave Ryan Suter. Maybe not for as long as you did, but
right.
Say he's got equal cap hit, like $7.5 million.
Right.
I would much rather have that on my books.
Yeah. Well, and it's easy to say the Parisian Suter signings would be something you can go on back on too, because obviously right now that is handicapping this team in a big way. But at the same time, I did an article on that exact thing early in this offseason where, it's very possible that this team is not at all in a much better spot without signing Parisian Suter. I mean, without signing them, you basically have to hope for a generational talent to fall to you in the draft lottery in order for that to be worth it. So,
or I could also throw out there any one of the last 4 first round draft picks that Doug Riseborough botched.
That's a good point too.
Colton Gillies, Benoit Pouliot.
Yeah.
Recently bought out Benoit Pouliot.
Yeah. Signed in Buffalo.
But yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to argue against the Burns trade, but that's kind of what I got for that. Also, I can't remember who the coach was that was going up against Mike Yeo when the job was open after Todd Richards was fired. But looking back, you're just kind of like...
well, it was when he was fired, or when he was not fired in 2014, it was Laviolette, right?
Right. Laviolette was like poorly going to wait for the Wild.
Yeah, he was he was hanging out in the Twin Cities, just killing time.
All right. I think we got one last one here from Tony. I lost my place. But in reference to new Timberwolves player Jimmy Butler giving out his phone number at his introductory press conference, Tony asked, which Twin Cities athlete do you most wish would give you their cell phone number?
That's a good one. I'm not as big on talking to athletes. Like, we've talked about this with being credentialed because, it's been well documented how much we haven't been credentialed. Rim shot. But I don't know. It'd be cool to talk to a player. I'd almost be more interested in talking to people in the front office. You know what I mean? I would much rather have Chuck Fletcher's number. So I can be like, hey, dude, what the hell is going on with this trade?
What are you doing?
Yeah. But as far as athletes go, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have anybody good that current Minnesota athletes that I would like to talk to on a daily basis. It'd be cool to know any of them, really. I don't know. Maybe Devin Dubnyk. I don't know. I'd talk goaltending. I don't know. He seems like an alright guy. Coyle and Zucker seem like pretty cool guys to hang around. Matt Dumba seems like a cool guy to hang around. Ryan Sewers seems painfully boring. Joe Mauer seems painfully boring. Miguel Sano seems like a lot of fun, but I'd probably have trouble understanding him most of the time, so I don't know.
I would do Charlie Coyle.
Yeah? So you could tell him
just on the grounds of me calling and asking him if the Big Omelet story is true.
So you can see if you could get him to change his Twitter handle to the Big Omelet.
Big Omelet 3.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going with that.
Sure. It's fair.
I don't know. I don't really pay attention to Vikings players or Wolves players.
God, no.
And the Twins, I'm just starting to kind of remotely get interested in again. So maybe down the road I'd have a Twins player in mind, but
yeah. Phil Hughes seems like a pretty funny guy. Trevor May seems like a cool enough guy. Glenn Perkins, I don't know. It seems like he's all right.
Okay, yes, Glenn Perkins. That would be a good one.
Yeah, I've heard not so great things about him, but other than that, I don't know. That just could be hearsay. So
He seems like a fun guy on Twitter, but
Sure. Yeah.
it's Twitter.
I also
so.
seem like a fun guy on Twitter, and I'm not. So there's that.
I mean, Dan Mick seems not fun on Twitter. He's also not fun in real life.
Ooh, burr.
Pot shot. All right. So that was the mailbag. Thank you to everyone for putting in questions for this week.
Yeah, tremendous questions this week.
Any final thoughts before we wrap it up this week?
No, I mean, this kind of is wrapping down. We're just kind of waiting on some dotting I's and crossing T's and whatnot. So, I don't know. It's easy to be mad at Fletcher right now about the trade and thereabouts, but we'll see. I mean, there's still the dust hasn't quite settled yet. Once the RFAs are signed and the contract and the roster is locked into place, I think we can pretty fairly judge this offseason. Until then, I don't know that we can. So as much as we don't like the trade and all that it entails, I think there's still a little bit to go.
My final thought, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, Paul Kariya going in the Hockey Hall of Fame, going in with Teemu Selanne of all people, which I think is awesome. And it's good to see the Hall of Fame committee get that right, as Kariya's career was cut short due to his concussions. And from what I gathered out of his media call on Monday, it looks like he's kind of starting to mend fences and appear in hockey. Maybe this is a huge step in that mending fences.
It kind of sounds like it.
And I hope to see him more involved in hockey somehow. I would really love to see him in some capacity with Department of Player Safety, because
no kidding.
It would be tremendous to have somebody in Department of Player Safety who's been actually affected by injuries you want to cut down on.
Right.
Instead of having it full of players who handed out those injuries.
Well, it also seems like he's a pretty bright guy, and maybe some of the inconsistencies that we see with DOPS would go away. That's just a pipe dream on my part, but maybe.
I'm also waiting on the Anaheim Ducks to retire Paul's number 9. That's probably about the 15th time on this podcast I've openly wished for it.
I think it's got to happen now.
It's got to happen now.
Yeah.
As I poked fun at the Ducks owners who put out a statement about Paul Kariya getting inducted in the Hall of Fame, and I quoted it with, "Who is Paul Kariya?" Ducks owners Henry and Susan Samueli 15 minutes before writing this statement.
Right.
But no, it is genuinely cool to see one of your favorite player go into the Hall of Fame. But speaking of favorite players, I saw John Van Wiesbroek reference at some point in the week.
Nice. I
don't think I quote tweeted it at you, but
no.
I just assume you have a search open for Van Wiesbroek.
I'm one of those guys. No, I did see him reference. God, where was it? Oh, Russo ran into him at the draft, I believe.
He was at the draft?
Yeah, he was. I don't know why.
I could have run into him.
Yeah.
I didn't, but...
Oh, okay. Yeah, but that's the last I heard of him.
All right. I'm randomly saying words now, so we better cut it off.
Sure.
You can follow Ben and I on the Twitters at Giles Farrell, at Ben Remington. Find our podcast Twitter account at GATG Wild Podcast. Again, I forgot to lead this into the show, but our podcast has a Facebook page now. If you prefer your stuff on Facebook, give us a follow, facebook.com/GATG Wild Podcast. You can find all of our shows, all 111 of them, on Libsyn, iTunes, Stitcher, and you can find the more recent ones on our podcast page at zonecoverage.com, which is also where Ben and I write, and sometimes jump on the staff pod, but probably not so much anymore because Ben started traveling again.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen soon.
Also, feel free to drop us an iTunes ratings. We like those. We try to be an otherwise fine podcast. But, yeah. So that will wrap it up for this week. Next week is our season finale. We are trying to line up a couple of guests to join us.
Yeah.
Have another 2-guest show, maybe.
Wow.
If the cards fall into place.
Sure.
But we'll have some fun next week. I'm sure the edit button or the dumb button will get hit a few times. But yeah, that'll do it for us this week, and we'll catch you next week.
Later.
St. Paul, Minnesota.
Minneapolis, Minnesota.
We are ducks, and ducks fly together.
That's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.